Welcome back to the Growth Guide. Today we are with Robert Brill, and Robert is the CEO of Brill Media, a media buy agency that focuses on precision advertising for business growth. The company has been honored 10 times across the Inc. 5000, Financial Times 500. You're also a member of the Forbes Business Council and Fast Company Executive Board, correct?
That's right. Writing about marketing and advertising.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, Keigan. Appreciate you you having me on the show.
Of course. So, first question I want to ask, can you talk a little bit about your story, how you started, how you got to where you are?
Yeah. So I started in advertising in 2003. It was actually marketing. Worked at Universal Music while I was still in college, and we were doing. It was called guerrilla marketing at the time, but it would just be considered social marketing. This was around the time Friendster was a thing, and we would go into forums and talk about the music artists we were promoting, like Hoobastank and Method Man, etc., The Killers. Then I spent the next decade working in advertising. Worked at Universal McCann on Sony Pictures, and 2013 I started my company Brill Media with the goal of taking the slew of opportunities that I knew to work for large businesses like Fortune 4 businesses. We worked on like ConocoPhillips and Bacardi and Toshiba, etc. So taking those tactics and those methods and practices and deploying them for smaller brands who didn't have $100 million a year to spend in marketing and advertising. And so now, fast forward again 10 years, Brill Media has been honored on the Inc. 5000, Financial Times 500, one of the fastest growing private companies in America. But the success of the company has to do with, hiring the right people, having great relationships, having great advisors, people who can help keep me out of trouble from making bad business decisions, that type of thing.
For sure. So, I want to go back a little bit on the difference between growing businesses large versus more small businesses.
Yeah. So, the reality is that every business, no matter how big or small you are, you'll have limited budget. You won't have enough money to do everything you want to do. So then the question is, how much should we be doing with the resources that we have? And that's a big part of the advisement component of our business. Our job is to run ads. Our job is to drive leads and sales. And any good agency or media buying team knows how to do that, right? So that's a given.
Yeah.
The question is, what's the strategy behind it? What's the thinking? What's the communication? So, a big part of what we do is an advisory to ensure that clients understand what we're doing, how we're doing it, and why it's beneficial to the business. And everything starts with a strategy. And the strategy helps you it keeps you from making bad decisions in the future. And it's a roadmap to ensure you go from where your business is today to where you want to be a year from now, let's say. And so everything I just said applies to big businesses and small businesses. The only difference between big businesses and small businesses fundamentally is that small businesses don't have the knowledge of where to go to get things done. You can get great advertising for $1,000. We offer it for $1,000 in ad spend plus $500 in fee to us per month. We're going to grow your business with the same tactics and strategies that work for the big businesses. Whether you have $1 million a year or $10 million a year, we use the exact same tools, exact same methods. The only difference is that you have less money, which is not a problem, and you're going to reach fewer people, which is fine because you need fewer people to grow your business, right? Hershey's, for example, did some consulting work for Hershey's a few years ago, and they need to reach 20 million people a week or a day or something like that, like some big number, so that when you go to CVS or Walmart, you're picking up Reese's or whatever they're selling. You don't need 20 million people to do something every day or every week for most businesses. You need like 5,
Exactly.
So it's not about the money. It's not about the quality of your product. It's about your ability to find the experts to do the work for you that you don't know how to do. That's the fundamental difference between big businesses and small businesses. And I'll also say, not all big businesses know how to do that either. They also make weird, bad, strange decisions. So, um, but I think that's a common trend about not having subject matter expertise available to them.
That's fair. So, talking about the budget side, I assume that's where a lot of creative testing comes in. Because I know in-house, when we do our media buying, we run very low cost, pretty much like dollar a day, especially on a limited budget for creative
Yep.
testing. Do you just want to walk me through kind of how you guys do that and why that's important?
Creative testing. You rang the bell. All right, creative testing. Our approach to creative testing, and if you want to see what's going on with our creative testing, we have a 15-minute video on our website, brillmedia.co/creative testing. You can get the full scoop on what I just described. And basically, you start with 5 ads. So we're talking about Meta now, and we can propagate these learnings across channels. But let's talk about Meta. You start with 5 ads. You create 5 images or video, 5 headlines, 5 primary texts. And then what we want to do is disassemble those assets. So now you have 5, 5, and 5. And if you reassemble them in all the possible combinations, you have 125 different possible ad variations. And now you have the ability to distill that down into the one all-star ad in about 3 weeks. And
Okay.
so what that testing does is over the course of 3 or 4 months of iterative ad testing, you are going to start to see most of your sales and your leads come from your all-star ads. And that's exceptionally valuable. And what ends up happening then is you can spend more money per day, per week, and per month. So you can start with $1,000 this month, and in a few months spend $10,000 a month, and in a few months again spend $100,000 a month. And your problem then is you're going to need more manufacturing, more customer service people, more storage, all the things to scale your business. But that's what good advertising does.
Awesome. Yeah. Another thing too, if we're going to stay on Meta, we see a lot of people, we clean up a lot of messes, especially when they come from another agency. It feels like most agencies get Meta advertising wrong. What, in your experience, do companies get wrong the most?
Get wrong the most. I think the common trend on Meta, and so look, I think you have a perspective on Meta advertising. We have a perspective. It might be the same, might be different. It's hard to tell, but there's a few things. I think you want to train Meta's machine learning algorithm to find your best customer. So broad targeting is going to be very important for us. We don't like when we see a lot of very narrow targeting on campaigns. That's one component. The next component is going to be just a big mess in Meta. No naming conventions or unclear naming conventions. The other thing is, we really want to have the opportunity to run full funnel advertising, right? Because if you just focus on remarketing, you're going to eventually dry up your demand. Like you're not populating the top of the funnel, and as a result of that, it's gonna be harder you're not gonna have the people to convert into a customer. So whether it's other marketing channels like social media, content posting, or SMS or email marketing, advertising is also a really good place to start consumer journeys. So when clients come to us and say, well, our remarketing isn't doing as well as it used to, that's a clear indicator that, that could be a few things, but it's a clear indicator that they need more people at the top of the funnel to sort of start to think about your business, so that in the future, your search engine optimization is going to perform better. Your Google ad, your paid media on Google are going to perform better, and your remarketing ads, et cetera, are going to perform better on Meta.
Awesome. Yeah, we're definitely pretty similar on our perspective for Meta. We're the same way. We like to let the algorithm kind of do the work, make sure we're passing the conversions through so it auto optimize for better leads. Because a lot of times with Meta that I've found, it's sometimes you get into the issue where it's like sales will blame marketing and vice versa. Marketing, we're bringing you leads, you're just not closing them. Sales, you're bringing us bad leads. A lot of times that's because they're not passing the conversion data back and letting the algorithm do the work for them.
100%.
So switching to TikTok, you mentioned earlier that a lot of like your strategies that you guys use are omni-channel. Is there any difference in TikTok that you guys found?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely looking at a classic funnel on TikTok. TikTok advertising can be accelerated if you have good content. I mean, so that's sort of an obvious blanket statement to many people. Creative is king, media is queen. So of course you're going to need good creative. So that's what I mean to say is if you're constantly posting on TikTok and you're going to have a relative level of virality across your content, those pieces of content should be turned into ads. So that's the first thing. Like you can basically do creative testing for free and market testing for free just by posting. So that's number one. Number two, I love one of the things I really enjoy doing is so I do the marketing for our firm. I don't do all of it, but like I'll develop the creative. I'm looking at landing pages. I'm developing content because it's something I really enjoy doing. It keeps me connected to advertising. Um, and then we have some of our media buyers running the intricacies of these campaigns. Anyway, one of the things I'm really enjoying doing right now is taking a piece of content, like a 4-minute video, and turning them on as different, like with different intros and different hooks. Same piece of content. And I start to use Descript to make that happen. It's pretty straightforward. I love Descript.
Oh yeah.
Uh, um, and that's a lot of fun for me because it's like, man, I can really say I can get the same general idea across in a few with a few different ways, and I find that just so much fun to have control over.
For sure. I mean, a lot of things that we're seeing with video content, at least kind of on our end, it's sure it's creative testing, but it's like a lot of like different videos where it's like what you're doing, you're testing the hook. Like obviously, there's three components to a good 1 minute video: hook, body, call to action. A lot of people aren't testing those components rather than just different videos as a whole.
100%. Yeah, I mean, but TikTok does well for conversions, um, and I think yeah, ongoing creative testing is important. It's good for short sprint campaigns and long term campaigns.
For sure. So I want to switch to a little bit about you and your entrepreneurial journey. Sorry. What lessons can you speak to after being a business owner for 10 years, specifically to younger people like me or who are just kind of getting going?
Yeah. I have the feeling that some of these lessons, look, I hope you probably learned them earlier than I did. So just for context, I started my business in 2013 and I was, I think, 32 at the time. Yeah, 10 years. I'm 42 now. Okay. So, mindset is very important. So you're going to fail. Everyone's going to fail. And that's okay. Like, I spent 10 years learning about things, which means making mostly good decisions, some bad decisions throughout my career. And then I started my company. So I learned. And corporate America is, depending on where you work, it's very different. Like there's some organizations that are very combative, internally combative on purpose because the strategy, the internal management strategy is essentially let everyone fend for themselves and fight themselves, and you're going to get the best ideas out of those people who are competing internally. Uh, that seems like a very uncomfortable situation to be in. And I don't like office politics and things like that. So it's hard, in my opinion, to be in corporate America and be okay with failing, because you have judgment and you have comparisons and you're looking at what other people are doing. This other person, they've been they've been in the business for whatever business you're in. Doesn't have to be advertising. They've been in the business for 2 years and look, they have this big title. You presume they're getting paid more, but they may or may not actually be getting paid more. That's a whole different thing. But you start, comparing it to other people and being afraid to fail. So mindset is important. Entrepreneurship is about having the spirit to thread through things that are difficult. And a lot of it is going to be how you react to the failures that actually are going to determine whether or not you're successful. You're going to fail. So when you fail, what do you do? Do you give up? Do you learn something, etc.? So that's one component. The next thing I would say is, I learned how to when and how to take risks I'm a relatively risk averse person, which is kind of odd for being an entrepreneur and taking risks running a business. Um, but what I've learned over the years is that the risk, the feeling of the risk. So when I talk about feeling of risk, I'm gonna boil it down to something very simple. It's like, how tense do I feel? How anxious does this thing make me feel? And that anxiousness or that this feeling of being anxious, okay, that feeling doesn't change, but the level of risk might change. So the risk, for example, we hired our first person, and I was like, oh man, it's going to be crazy having another person. I'm responsible for their salary. That was a really anxious moment for me. But now we have a far bigger team, and a 20-person team, and it's like, yeah, now I'm responsible for the livelihoods of 20 people. uh, and that doesn't feel particularly challenging for me. You know, um, turning on new solutions or capabilities. There may be a financial risk involved, or paying for something that you weren't expecting to pay for. Like, that's a risk. So I think, when I look at people like Elon Musk buying Twitter for $40 billion or whatever, yeah, that's a big chunk of his net worth. It's not about the amount of money, it's about how much money is it to you. That's the level of risk. And that never changes. You're always going to be able to have opportunities to take bigger risks that would have seemed unfathomable 5 and 10 years ago. So mindset, risk, hiring at the right time is very important. Those are all things that I think, I've learned throughout the years. And it's the reason why I do this job. I actually want to take those responsibilities. I like the magnitude of responsibility. I wanted to create that opportunity for myself. So I didn't think I'd get it anywhere else. And, it's worked out.
That's honestly some really good advice. And I think a lot of people can take that, especially on the failing part. A lot of people feel like are afraid to fail, which is why they won't take risks, which is why they're stuck at a certain, say, financial or whatever, where they're stuck, regardless of where they are in life or business as well.
Yeah.
So
It's hard.
the one thing I want to ask is a little bit about your leadership and culture in the office, because you mentioned you have a team of 20. Are they mostly in person, all in person?
No, there's plenty of people I've never met on our
Okay.
team based of, in person. We're all remote. We're remote on purpose because the last job I had like an hour and a half commute each way in Los
Mm,
Angeles. It wasn't that far in distance. It just took forever because of the freeways. It's
yeah.
like, I don't want that anymore. So this was, we started in 2013. So it's that long enough before COVID that we can honestly say that it was our decision to do, not just a happenstance. Um, yeah, and so culture's evolved. It's tough because I've had to transition from being an employee to being a business owner to being the CEO, and there's different. As an employee, you want to be hardworking. You want to make sure that you're being. My perspective on being an employee was I want to ensure that my bosses understand that I'm working hard and that I have their best intentions in mind, and I'm going to go overboard to ensure that things are good if I value the job. But it's on a whole other level being the owner of the business. So I would just trudge along, work hard, and then I hire people, and I had to understand that they're going to work hard. I hired great people, but I can't expect them to do the things that I'm doing on a routine basis. Um, and that's okay. So one of the things that really hurt us when we started hiring was we didn't have a standard operating procedure. I hired smart people. I knew they were smart. Some of them I worked with in the past, but it didn't work out because it was too chaotic in the early days of our business. And like, we didn't have the communication system. Like, at one point, Facebook had a Slack like tool or something. Like, we used that. And it was like we chatted on text. It was a mess. And it took me like 6 or 8 months to like bang my head against the wall to just understand that it's a mess. excuse me, and then another like 9 months, and then like another 4 months to hire the right person to solve the problem I now figured out I have, which is I have no SOP. Then another 9 months, right? So it's like, 9, 13, like 18 months. It's like a year and a half of mostly pain, to realize that you need a standard operating procedure. And once we got that taken care of, we were able to scale. So SOP, and it sounds kind of boring, SOP, like I didn't get into business for SOPs or, to deal with billing or invoices, right? But what SOPs does is it creates harmony. People know when their job, when they're on, and they know what they need to accomplish, and they know when their job ends and then someone else's starts in terms of responsibilities on a given project. So having so throttling down the level of chaoticness in our business helped people feel more comfortable with the work that we were doing and enjoying the work that they were doing. So that's a part of creating a stable environment relating to culture. The next step was me doing introspection to understand what I'm good at and what I'm not good at. And um what's interesting to me is I've had people tell me that they're scared of me, like professionally. I'm like, why? I'm such a nice guy. Like, but tell your face that, because my face looks like I'm like staring into your soul. And it's like, yeah, I'm just working hard. I'm like, I'm into something. I'm trying to get things done, and I'm going to hold you accountable. And I hope we can all succeed together, right? Like, I want the best for my people. But what I've learned is that, we have a really amazing chief operating officer, and she balances me out from the empathy perspective. So she teaches me how to be a better leader because the team loves her and she loves the team. And I'm just working. I'm just pounding. I'm working on nights. I'm working on the weekends. Like, I'm just like, hey, did we get this thing done or this other thing? And our CEO is like, how you feeling? How you doing? Just checking in. Let's have our meeting. Tell me what's going on. Like, a very different part of our business. So when I look at culture, I look at hiring the right people and being able to give them the autonomy to succeed as much as I possibly can, whether it's with culture or work or deliverables or clients or whatever the case is. So I think our culture has come a long way, and it's good because we have a, we have a team of people who stay together because they like working with each other. I'm not a bad boss. I'm also not in the weeds every day at this point, but they're there for themselves, and I can say that our chief operating officer built that, not me.
Okay. I mean, hiring great people. I mean, it sounds like you're pretty thankful and you got kind of lucky getting her. It sounds like she's great.
We cultivated. I mean,
Yeah.
our COO started as an account manager.
Okay.
So like, and that's another thing I learned going back to one of the early questions. Like, there's massive dividends in hiring people that stay with the business for a long time. So prior to this, I had hired someone who stayed with us for 6 months. I was really upset when she left, and I was upset because, like, why aren't you up for the challenge anyway? But that was me creating a suboptimal work environment. So now the fact that, as much as you can, keep the right people for the team, and it'll pay dividends, in culture, in knowledge, in the Brill way. Apparently, there's a Brill Media way that she knows what it is, and I don't know what it is, but it's the Brill way. Um, but yeah, cultivating talent is also a big part of the success equation.
Looking ahead, what excites you the most about the future of Brill Media, both on just like a financial side where you're going, and then on like the new emerging trends on the advertising technology side?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. There's a larger selection of media channels available, right? I just looked at this stat this morning. the combination of Google and Meta had a 55% market share of digital advertising in 2017, and that number is down to 49%. They were calling it the Meta Google duopoly, which is kind of like fading a little bit because you have companies like Amazon, and then you have a slew of retail media networks like Walmart and Home Depot, et cetera, that create advertising opportunities. And there's also more demand for streaming ads spending like Hulu, Roku, et cetera. So more channels is more interesting, and more ways to reach audiences and drive results for our clients. So that's fun. The other part that's fun for me is, and this goes back, I think, to something earlier I said, which is I'm really here for the magnitude of responsibility. Like my wife last night, she's like, "You're a businessman." Because we were talking to we have a 5-year-old. We're talking to our our kid, and somehow it came up, what does Dad do? And Dad is a businessman. I never really thought about myself as a businessman, but I thought of myself like as an advertising guy, and et cetera. And what's interesting for me is that it's the business of this is what's fun for me. It's not always easy, but it is invigorating in some ways, figuring out the solutions to various challenges. And one of the things that I think is really interesting right now is using AI. Caveat: hope Chat GPT doesn't implode, but with the Sam Altman drama, high school drama happening here. But let's assume it continues on, or it transfers to Microsoft or whatever. But the core idea being like the ability to make our process happen faster, and let our human talent, our people, work on things that have higher value, and the lower value things happen with the AI. Things like formulating a media plan, not the thinking behind it, not the channels that are running, but formatting an Excel document that's easy to just plug and play, right? It might seem easy, like you just have a standard template and you modify it, but you can optimize that process even further. So I'm really interested in using these chat agents to create bigger opportunities. One of the things I did a few weeks ago is I created a copywriting chat agent. A lot of our clients are creative firms, and when I say like creative firms who package up our media buying services and then go to market, we're not going to replicate that work. They don't get out of bed for anything under $25,000 per project. That's not us. We do media buying, and clients are spending, well over that, but it's for advertising, not for creative. So I'm like, all right, let me become better at copywriting by creating a chatbot that gives me, the basic principles from some of the best copywriters in the world. It's fun. It's interesting. It's creating solutions for challenges.
Awesome. So I think we're going to wrap this up here. Thanks again, Robert, for coming on. I really enjoyed the conversation and your advice.
Thanks, Keigan. Appreciate the time.
No worries.